Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, teachers, preachers and whale beachers, welcome along to the Joe Spiver YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. Oh, and here he is again, folks. The grinning woke globalist come to pour his liberal woke orthodoxy right down your throats of a Sunday. I am recording this on the Sabbath, folks, and we are going to be talking about God. This is the day, of course, when I'm supposed to be downing tools and reading religious matters and letting my mind and my brain recuperate for the coming striving week. But we're going to be talking about God, folks. I know, I look so utterly unqualified, and indeed maybe fully unqualified, but I'm going to offer my twopence worth today. What is it? God ordains that strength shall come from the mouths of babes and sucklings or something. I'm sure that's in Matthew somewhere. I did just check that an hour beforehand just to make sure that it was still in my brain. And so here it comes, folks. I sent out my little technological messengers into your lives a few weeks ago now, asking if, well, I may as well just quote the paragraph. For the purposes of an upcoming video, I'm afraid I need to prod some of you grotty subordinates for an answer to a deep question. Do you believe that a God surveils the universe, gives us moral guidance, and offers us a trip into the clouds afterwards when our business concludes on Earth? This does not have to relate to the monotheisms or indeed anything described in text. I simply want to know if you believe there to be a skyward arbiter watching our every hour. Now that, of course, is filled with my usual prolixity, but I think you get the point. And that received 134 votes. I feel like Graham Brady, the member of the 1922 Conservative Party committee, when a new member is being, or a new leader rather, is being elected. There have been 134 votes, and 77% of you said that there was indeed not such a figure outlined in the above passage, and 23% of you therefore mathematically said that there was indeed a person in the upstairs passage. Now, I don't know quite what to draw from that, and indeed, if you, of course, if you just want bookish content, then this video is not really going to be for you. You know, if indeed you would only like me to deal in subordinate clauses and parentheses and in elegant variation and alliteration, then that time will come when I review Henry James's Bostonians in a few days' time. But today we are discussing God, and I was drawn to this subject by a video which I've now watched twice, cantankerously and apoplectically as per usual, which was posted to the channel of Alex O'Connor not so long ago, I think about a week ago now. He is I think one of the world's most lucrative atheists now, but he is also something of a, not perhaps a moral philosopher in his own right, but an interpreter of moral philosophy, and he has done that to the tune of, I think, probably best part of 1 million subscribers now. And he hosted a video, or hosted an interview with Ayaan Ali, who until a few years ago was if not herself, a member of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. She was a confluent to that stream, if you know what I mean. And so she was a self-avowed atheist. She has had a hell of a life by the sounds of her Wikipedia page. She was brought up in Somalia, and as a result of the staunch orthodoxies of that country, underwent horrendous barbarous genital mutilation at a young age, and was, I think, a shoo-in for a forced marriage, but managed to migrate north, and eventually ended up residing in the Netherlands, and is now, I think, the wife of Niall Ferguson in America, I would presume. So that's her story, and everybody always talks about that. I mean, that no doubt is a very, very impressive thing to have done, and I have no doubt that she has a greater moral stomach than I, as a result. But still, everybody always goes on, "Oh, isn't she impressive? Oh, Christ, I can't fail but to be impressed. Oh, the last thing I expected was to be impressed by her." Whenever I read her writing or listen to her speak, I am not impressed at all. Such was, I think, the potency of her mendacity throughout Alex O'Connor's video, that I was drawn to make a video on such a thing. So yes, we're going to be discussing God. We're going to be discussing the nature of the interview, and we're going to react to some of the things that she said. I'm going to outline my positions. I am far from an ineluctable despot, and so I'm very, very willing to be openly and courageously refuted in the comments, if indeed you have yourselves the stomach or the time to do so. So we're going to discuss bits of the interview, and we're also going to discuss the nature of the monotheisms and God and moral arbitration. a throat clearing before we do begin. I am indeed an atheist myself, folks. There have been times in my life where God has perhaps come knocking, but I have answered demurely, in the sense that at university, when I was drinking and I was surveying the female scene and didn't have an awful lot of, what should we say, direction, let's say, should we say direction, and indeed pedagogical tuition, when I was just faffing about, when I was living a life of blameless obscurity, God came knocking, I suppose, and that would have been the time when I could have shuffled into a pew and donned great golden garlandry and, you know, taken up the sacraments and confided in a sex pest in a very, very small wooden box in a church. I could have done so and didn't. I forswore alcohol and started doing exercise and read an awful lot more, and through the jabbering giblet of modern technology into the through the window, and you know, made myself something of a an aesthetic slightly. I'm not quite the Chris Williamson Petersonian type, but I sidelined pleasure, shall we say, for a little while, and that tended to sort me out. I did, again, as I say, I didn't need to pray to the moral arbiter in the sky. I simply do not believe that such a person exists. This is in connection with my first answer to Alex O'Connor's first question, which is essentially what brought you to Christ. And she points out the meaninglessness of her recent existence in the West, and how I think she was going through something of a psychological crisis, and as a result, she came to God. She found that he was the teachings provided her what should we say, in moral inspiration and solace, and indeed it is, you know, far from me to delegitimize somebody's horrendous circumstances when we do seem to have a great morass of meaninglessness in our society. I do not want to demean you by saying that you are by necessity stupid as a result of doing that. If any scripture which or belief system that pushes the wolves away is to be accepted and welcomed. But she says, yes, I say, her conversion is put down to a spiritual emptiness. I do have sheets written down, folks. She says then that I realise that there is more than the material and the rational. She then points to an irrefutable mass untethering and thinks that the apparent insurgency of godlessness is to blame for our 21st century ills. Now, that is quite the jump, is it not, folks? I will reference this again in another section, but to say that you have received some kind of spiritual insight, to say that a book has taken you by the scruff of the neck, to say that it has saved you in a very, very dark and dangerous time, is a very, very different thing to saying that it is phenomenologically real. I can say, for example, that Pride and Prejudice is a magnificent book on the intertonation of love and the common trope of enemies to lovers. I can say that Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is absolutely magnificent, and I can love Gollum and Gimli and Legolas and the journey right the way through to Mordor and the fires of Mount Doom. I can say that Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is a magnificent display by Byron of irreverent youth and is indeed magnificently structured poesy. I can say, pick a book, folks. Pick your favourite work. That is very, very different. Liking it is very, very different to saying that those things actually existed and actually happened. So to say that there is something more than the material and the rational is in and of itself, I think, rather irrational, is it not? If, just because you feel that there has to be something beyond, doesn't necessitate that there must be something beyond. Just because you hear a creak of the floorboards doesn't mean there is a ghost. Just because you see a swish of the curtains doesn't mean there is a ghost. I can consult a neurologist and receive a more adequate explanation of the feeling of joy, of loneliness, of jealousy, of concupiscence. For those of you playing Joe Spivey Verbal Bingo, concupiscence is worth 7 points this afternoon. I can consult a neurologist and receive just as adequate a response on that as I can from a priest. Okay? It is as simple as that. All of this numinous, starry-eyed soul-searching can be explained by science, and we do not need We do not need bearded, canonized maniacs telling us otherwise. So that's my response to her first question. Then Mr. O'Connor, he did a very good job of he could easily have just argumentatively decapitated her, but he did a good job. He was rather reserved and stood back and let her self-incriminate almost. So he says that, you know, nobody disputes or resents, you know, Christianity's positive effects on you, Ayaan, but does that mean that she believes it is all true? And she says once more that the Gospels are so revelatory and facilitate her own enrichment that she chooses to believe them. And again, that it is important to separate faith from reason. Her fellow atheists, here we go, this is the first jab, her fellow atheists were fortifying themselves against belief. Their worldview was itself becoming a doctrine. Now that is indeed a bed of balderdash, folks, as I'm sure you will agree. If you come up to me, perhaps in a leafy park where the birds chirp and the squirrels scamper, and there are some lovely toddlers, you know, playing about the fields, and there are golden retrievers bounding up and down. You come up to me, you sit beside me on the park bench, you strip the copy of The Guardian or the Daily Telegraph from my hands and say that I believe, sir, that most triangles are comprised of 5 sides. And if I say, no, I don't have a mathematical PhD, but I do believe that triangles are made of three sides, that does not mean that I have an ideology. That does not mean that I have an orthodoxy or a religion. That means that I'm refuting something, I'm kicking something into touch, which I believe to be objectively false. If you tell me that Peru is an annexation of the United Kingdom, I do not have to be a kind of scabrous elbow patch geographer to tell you that that is nonsense. If you tell me that, oh, goodness knows what, if you advise me that having a coffee 30 minutes before bed will improve my sleep pattern, I do not have to be a Caucasian scientist to tell you that that in and of itself is rubbish. It is not, atheism is not a religion. It is a simple refutation of all of the religious scriptures. It says, it even, like myself, admits that there is, again, moral solace to be found in very many sections of it. You can admit, through gritted teeth, that it is probably the finest work of literature and is the bedrock on which an awful lot of our society subsists or stands. Can you subsist on something? I'm not sure. You can admit all that, and then but then also say that it was not real. You can say that Jesus Christ, the bearded carpenter sent down supposedly by God, may well have been killed on the cross, but he certainly did not go into a tomb to come back alive and perform miracles. That is a phenomenological shifting of the goalposts once more. And if you do not believe that, I do believe you shouldn't be classed as a Christian. You can be classed, therefore, as what Richard Dawkins might call a cultural Christian. But if you really don't think, and Jordan Peterson has a really hard time with this, if you don't think that that Jesus really did go into there and really did come back alive, then you're not a Christian. I realise that I'm focusing rather a lot on the monotheisms, folks, when I didn't really caveat that very clearly in my YouTube proposition on the community post, but so I'm impugning perhaps Jews, Muslims, and Christians more than I am people who believe that being born in February confers certain characteristics on them. But even so, it is still a jump, is it not, to take scientific rationalism and say that perhaps there is something outside of our knowledge. That is in and of itself not. I don't think that's particularly stupid either. But you know, to say that this is all the consequence of a divine plan is rather strange as well, given that 99.9 recurring % of species have been and gone, as it were. They have seen the light of day and are now pushing up daisies, and, you know, fascinating scientists and collators of museums in the fossil record. We have been around for about 5 billion years. Oh, we haven't been around for 5 billion. The Earth, in its various refulgent forms, has been around for about 5 billion years. And in 5 billion years' time, the sun, if it works in the way that most huge tumescent supernovas do, it will expand out and destroy Earth entirely, as well as very many of the other planets which bugger up our solar system. Which is some plan, is it not, folks, to have life and then to suddenly not have life? Where else do we go if we say that God has a fine plan? children with leukemia who exist for, 12 or 15 months rather than the biblically mandated 70 years and 10. What's going on there? God does move in mysterious ways, does he not? Entire villages who have not themselves a sin on their record, who are wiped out in tsunamis. I'm saying nothing new. If there is such ubiquitous wrongdoing or such ubiquitous suffering, who on earth is it that's controlling this? The entire lives of certain ants who burrow into the eyes of African children and make them blind forevermore. All of this nonsense. You have to suppose, and this is used a lot by Christopher Hitchens, and I'm trying not to invoke that redoubtable atheist too much. Lord may rest his soul. He used to say that it's strange, is it not, that theists or believers in moral arbiters must persuade us to believe that, by most anthropologists' reckoning, for 200,000 years there has been destitution, there has been torture, there has been slavery, there have been people have lived and died for generations and generations subsequently in the most horrendous circumstances, barely living beyond 30, not knowing why it was that thunder thundered or why rain fell, and for 200,000 years Jesus, the God up there, stood there with his arms folded saying, that's fine, that's fine. Millions and billions of people have died in the worst circumstances imaginable. That's jolly good. After 198,000 years, he suddenly shrugs his shoulders and says, very well, I shall send my son not to a place of high learning where his tuition will be best served, but to what is it Hitchens used to say, illiterate Palestine. I think that's again a very, very decent argument. Even if there is such a person in the sky, I don't really think he adheres to the person outlined, to the characteristics outlined in your dear scriptures, folks. And I realise that I'm preaching to the converted, given that 77% of you said that you didn't believe in God. But there we are. Next up we have Ayaan. Often refers in her video. I've since cast away my notes. I'm untethered myself from my notes. I'm coming to you extemporaneous and raw as per usual. She says that atheists, and again people who I have respect for, William F. Buckley and Pete Hitchens, say that atheists do not give Christianity enough credit in the cultivation of their own moral sensibilities. In other words, we don't quite realise just how much the Christian faith has given our sense of right and wrong, which is again a bit strange, given that a great many societies have flourished and then foundered without ever having put their eyes across the Christian doctrines. It seems very strange, and we know, do we not, from reading Mr. Sullivan's book on the founding of the West, that Christianity was chosen as a continental religion not because of its objective worth often, but because of political and monarchical expediency. But again, I don't know whether religious ears are open to these complaints and these lucubrations. Again, for those of you playing Joe Spivey Verbal Bingo, lucubrations is worth 11 points this afternoon, because that's a jolly long word, isn't it? But that seems very strange, and it's rather insulting, isn't it? How dare they say that had I never read the Gospels and Leviticus and Genesis and bits and bobs, that I would be somehow going out and decapitating people, that I would be raping masses of poor wenches in the streets, that I would be coveting my neighbour's ass, that I would be performing all sorts of morally redundant behaviour. That is an insult to the human condition, and says that right and wrong is dictated by the celestial North Korea, again, as Mr. Hitchens would say. So that might be just all that I want to talk about. She did then go on to discuss Donald Trump, which, of course, a person whose ridiculousness I do not need to flesh out any more than I already have done on this channel. But their moral posture and their cachet has left them entirely. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, Piers Morgan, Lord knows, Andrew Clave, and all of the fools at the Daily Wire. Their bank of credit is now at zero, because it's one thing to take up the sacraments and to say that one must live a decent life, and then it is another to put your support behind somebody who is an adjudicated rapist, a convicted felon, a self-avowed sex pest, and somebody who obviously wants to disassemble the US Constitution, install himself as a dictator, somebody who has orchestrated an armed insurrection to prevent the legal ratification of a democratically elected president, somebody who would not know a moral imposition if it came and took the burger from his hands. So that's that's my position. It's strange, isn't it, that they can so easily sacrifice their moral foundings, their moral tenets, so as to put their name, so as to file in behind a thoroughly disreputable candidate. I think that shows just how malleable and just how pliant some religious people are, except of course when it comes to gay marriage or to a daughter having an abortion at age 14 when a family member has been raped. They are curiously stern on those matters, aren't they, folks? Almost as if some of their scripture is a smokescreen for their bigotry. But I am going on far too much. What else is it I wanted to discuss? Oh yes, there is just the one last point that Ricky Gervais often raises. He points out rather perspicaciously that there have been probably the best part of 400 gods, many more, but 400 recognised gods in scriptures, in literature, in cave paintings or whatever. I am simply saying that all of those 400 gods didn't exist, whereas you are saying that 399 of those gods did not exist. Mathematically, that seems strange and indefensible, and yet the churches still stand. The churches are still erect, for lack of a better term. But there we are. I think I will probably close off there, folks. I hope that I haven't been too aggressive. I hope that my veins haven't popped out too sharply. I hope on the Sabbath day that I haven't defiled my Maker too severely. I'm not taking Pascal's wager, by the way. I'm putting all of my eggs in the atheistic basket. If indeed you could prove to me that the God exists, that would be great. I would love to have religious faith. I would love to have a big bad man in the sky who looks after me, and who does not care when I go and behead 3 people, eat one, and then fridge the other 2 for later. If his love if he is omnibenevolent, and if his love is ever with us, then I don't really see why there would be any need for moral imposition anyway. But I think that just about does it. I cannot wait to be to find any theists or any believers discussing this in the comments. And I know that it's somewhat tangential and somewhat off character or off brand, to use the horrendous neologism, but I wanted to get my thoughts across. I was doing this to my laptop when I was hearing Ayaan Hirsi Ali spout her rubbish, and so I thought that I may as well convert it into a video and monetize it for our mutual benefit, folks. Wouldn't that be nice? So yes, it is, as I say, I've recorded it on the Sabbath day, but it will be out on the Sunday when I should be praising Jesus and singing some mellifluous hymns. But I'm going to go on reading Henry James's The Bostonians and have myself a pleasurable Saturday, safe in the knowledge that very many believers will be chastising me in the comments soon. So I can't wait to have those discussions. If indeed by either the power of prayer or your visceral reasoning you can convert me to a particular denomination, I'll be more than happy to do that because it sounds jolly good. But yeah, please let me know whether you would like more of these videos discussing the issues of our time. I usually inject them into regular book reviews, but I've just decided to do that to dedicate an entire video to it. So yes, I'm going on far too long than I need to, but I'm going to, as ever, folks. Thank you ever so much for watching, yes, may the Lord's favour be ever upon you. Thank you very much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.